Okay, so ZigBee protocol. What do we have in ZigBee? We have a number of different things that replace the higher layers. One of them is clusters. So let's say you have, if you actually want to go about designing some application, what do? Is you get a bunch of nodes. What are nodes? Node is an abstraction. Really, a node is some kind of actual physical piece of hardware that's sitting and implementing a system. But as you view it in the network, it's actually a system capable of implementing the protocol. So we have some nodes that are, let's say, in a building, in some industrial parts manufacturing plant or something. And some of these nodes have, maybe a fire, like a sprinkler attached to them. And some nodes have computers attached to them. Some nodes may have lights attached to them. And these nodes that have sprinklers attached to them are meant to turn on the sprinkler with the fire when the fire alarm goes off. And so they'll know if there's a fire in the building, turn on the sprinkler nodes. And you could kind of view all of these sprinkler nodes as having one thing in common, that being that they have to turn on when there's a fire. And all these other nodes, they're not really intended to, deal with that communication. Some of them just take take data in and kind of read it out to a server, or kind of sit there, turn a light on, or do some other measurement or something like that. And all of those nodes that share something in common, you could call a cluster, and that's one way that you could kind of replace this higher level functionality just by using this kind of simple lightweight set. And there are also these things called endpoints, which are kind of like application, like similar to ports in TCP/IP. These kind of endpoints that say, I want to talk to the application on this node, on this sensor that's actually running the code for measuring actuator data or something, as opposed to some application that's measuring data for maybe light data, or maybe speed accelerometer data. And I think that next is actually Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what the protocol actually involves, and then about the group of people that's getting together to try and further the use of the protocol, and some potential advantages and disadvantages of ZigBee. Now, the addressing scheme in the ZigBee protocol supports up to just over 64,000 nodes in the network, which is, it's not like on the high end, not necessarily on the low end, but it works for the personal area networking kind of deal. And the security standard for ZigBee implementations is the AES 128-bit encryption, which is a government-used standard with a symmetric key encryption that uses, there are a few different flavors of it, and ZigBee uses 128. Also, ZigBee, on all the devices where ZigBee is implemented, they have these power saving mechanisms. In particular, the duty cycle on a ZigBee compliant device is really like, it'll operate in a low power mode maybe 80% of the time. So it'll only be operating, sending data, processing a very small percentage of time, which saves a lot of power. And if you'll recall when we talked earlier, that's one of the main points of the ZigBee protocol is that it is low power and energy efficient. So the ZigBee Alliance is actually a pretty cool feel. They're an open standards, if you're familiar with Linux and Firefox and stuff like that. It's an open standard saying they want people to collaborate. It's nonprofit, and they focus on developing sustainable solutions for our everyday lifestyle. That being said, they have a lot of people from industry and academia working together on specific tasks that they want to make more sustainable. Examples of that listed here. So when we say something is a ZigBee certified application, it doesn't mean that they stamped it and said, yep, this is a good thing to do. It means they got together, looked at some hardware, and put together kind of a basic, here's what you can use if you want to use our protocol in a smart energy implementation. Here's the kind of setup you should have if you want to use ZigBee in your home automation. So like anything you're going to do, and like Justin said, there's advantages and disadvantages depending on your application. As we've said over and over and over again, it is a low power, low data rate protocol. So you're saving energy. It's low cost because there's not a lot of hardware involved in it. You know, they made it so that you can do this, you can use this protocol on really small embedded systems. And the smaller packet size, we wish to convey to you here that it's a no-frills implementation. So it's simplistic. The disadvantages to it involve, like a big one that they talk about a lot is security. Using the ECE480, it works really well. I mean, the government uses it, they consider it a good deal, but the problem with the protocol is you have to actually enable at the application layer, you have to say, yes, I want to use that security, because by default, it doesn't turn on, which can be a problem. I mean, if you don't know any better, and you're supposed to make it simple, and anyone can go and throw up a ZigBee system, and they don't know to turn the security on, it's problematic. Also, a small footprint. I mean, I don't know, does anybody in this room own a ZigBee compliant device? Because I don't. Does anybody own anything that's Wi-Fi compliant? Probably. So for the Alliance to push using ZigBee compliant devices and sustainable solutions that are supposed to save you money, you'd have to go out and buy a whole bunch of equipment that is all ZigBee compliant. So that becomes, kind of defeats the purpose of it saving you money and being sustainable. You know, throwing away all your old equipment and getting a new set of stuff that is compliant with this new protocol. So we talked to you about different network topologies and why they're useful in different situations. We talked to you about mesh networks as it relates to our project, and then the IEEE wireless standards and why they're important and why you need a protocol. And then we talked to you specifically about the ZigBee protocol and some of the good and bad things about it. Any questions?
Go ahead.
You mentioned talking about disadvantages. What do you see as the future of ZigBee protocol? Do you see it taking over certain areas, creating some new market area, or just kind of staying real small, specific?
That's a really interesting question, actually, because that main disadvantage that I talked to you about with it having a small footprint right now, like not a lot of people having ZigBee stuff, it depends. You know, if they push hard enough with this open thing, it could potentially make that hardware and those systems cheaper and cheaper, which would make it not as big of a deal for you to have something that was ZigBee compliant, and potentially opening it up to maybe communicate with your Wi-Fi and be like an interoperable thing. I can't really say what I think the exact future of it will be. I'm hoping that it goes forward because it is their focus on sustainability, they're going the right way with it, having it low power and low hardware.
Yeah, with respect to future ability, this is 802.15.4, so 802.15.1 is Bluetooth. What do you think the other two were in between that? 802.15.2, 802.15.3. So yeah, I mean, you know, these standards kind of get ramified all the time and don't get implementation because people don't like them. The great thing about it is, you know, what happens is if you come up with a standard, if you have an implementation and it just sucks, you know, eventually that influences later standards that you write, and it becomes kind of like a stepping stone. So a lot of people right now don't think that ZigBee has everything they want. You know, there are lots of people that want to write, you know, 802.15.5. You know, what is 802.16? That's WiMAX. You know, they come up with these standards all the time. You know, they're based on it. That's the way engineering works. You come up with something, you know, over time. You find problems with it because your hardware evolves, your abilities get better, and you come up with something better, and it's based on what it was before. You know, I don't think anybody's going to say that we still want to use token ring networking, but it was a networking thing that, you know, caused a lot of hype back in the day. And, you know, just because our systems got better, our hardware advanced, you know, kind of influenced what we have now.
Good answer.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a question, but then it kind of relates to your topic, not quite.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you by any chance familiar with L2.21 IEEE standard?
What's the name of it again?
IEEE L2.21.
Yeah, but is there a colloquial name for it other than that? Like, what's the typical implementation?
Official name, I think, is end of our mechanism for Wi-Fi management.
Yeah, I don't think I think I've read about it, but I don't think I know enough about it to speak about it. What is there any particular question
No,
you
I'm
would
just
have?
wondering, like, is it possible to implement a soft heterogeneous handover mechanism right now?
So a soft handover mechanism with the networks, just in like.
ZigBee Wi-Fi, is that what you mean?
Yeah, no, it's not implemented. It's not supposed. The goal isn't really to do that because the devices that are implementing this are really intended for kind of like low power monitoring type situations instead of situations like ZigBee is. So personal area networking in general isn't intended to be used for things like Wi-Fi. It's really meant to be for communication between embedded devices. It's not really the goal that you would use one of these for long range communications in what's called infrastructure mode. So if you have Wi-Fi, you have ad hoc mode and infrastructure mode. Ad hoc mode never caught on, and you can't use it at the same time as infrastructure mode, at least in the majority of the implementations I've seen. So people aren't really trying to push these transceivers to be used in infrastructure mode, which is what people would really want to use Wi-Fi for at the moment. And because of that, they aren't really, pushing in that direction of doing handoffs. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, certainly an important one, if you want to use it in any end device, in consumer device. Thanks.
Okay,